Welcome to the session on technical descriptions. In this session, we are going to focus on two subtopics: description of a technical object and second, description of a technical process. Let's have a look at the overview of the session. First, we will discuss what is description. Then we will talk about its classification of technical description, and then understand description of technical object and process, and lastly we'll learn some guidelines to write technical descriptions, either object or process description. Okay, now moving on to the very first question: what is a technical description? So, a technical description is a spoken or written representation of an object or an event. The object can be any technical device, or an event could be any technical process. To make it more simple, we can also say a technical description is a detailed discussion of the physical aspects of a thing. So in a description, you basically represent certain things as it is, the way they appear to us. Okay, now must be wondering about why do we need to learn technical descriptions. So let's have a look at the significance and the need for writing technical descriptions. One important thing, that technical description is part of technical writings, and these descriptions are very important feature of different technical writings such as project report, proposal, research papers, and product specifications. Moreover, the technical descriptions are also important for ensuring safety and compliance with the safety standards, especially if you are handling any project or carrying out a certain process. A technical description is also crucial for understanding a new and unfamiliar concepts, devices, and process. You being a student of engineering, you might be learning a lot of new concepts, devices, and processes. And one of the source of information for you for learning these new and unfamiliar concepts and devices would be a technical description of these devices and processes. All right, now let's learn about the classification of technical descriptions. So the technical descriptions have been classified into two categories. One, technical object description, which generally talk about different technical objects like the instruments, tools, machines, mechanisms, and devices. All right, whereas the other variety or the other category of technical description is technical process description, which talks about certain procedures or operations which are carried out mostly in the factories or the industries. Okay, so these are the two different categories or classifications of technical descriptions. So but obvious that there is a difference in way of writing a technical object description and technical process description. In this session, in the next slide, we will be discussing about the description of a technical object. We will learn two things in it, that is, what should be the content and structure of writing a technical description of an object, and let's have a look at it. So there are different sections in this, and we have divided this description into different sections. So let's have a look at the first section. The first section is in the beginning of the beginning of the description of an object. One should, as a writer, we should give an orientation to the object. Now, orientation is basically, it's like introducing the object. Okay, so in the introduction, first we do include a technical definition, and when and why that particular technical object is needed. So this is just a basic introduction to the object that you are describing. After this, we give a general description of the object through a label diagram. So how exactly the object looks like, to give a clear clue about it, a label diagram is included. Now the third section of this description would be the description of the characteristics of components of that particular object. Now characteristics are the desirable aspects of an object but are not the components, or components are the different parts of an object. For example, a wooden pencil has lead, a wooden barrel, an eraser, and a metal clip. So you can say a wooden pencil has 4 components, but we don't call it as characteristics. These will be the components. Alright, so in the description of characteristics or components, you can describe both the things or either of the two as per the demand of the object description, or as per the purpose of object description. So characteristics, you can just talk about the special features that particular object has, and then you go on describing each component separately. When you are describing a component, there are certain information we need to provide. So the first thing, you should talk about the function that particular component performs, and second, how it appears, that is its external features like color, height, depth, length, width, shape, weight, materials, texture, amount, pattern, design, and its location. You should also include its relationship with other components. So how does it work in relationship with the other components? So in each you have to describe each component covering these 3 elements. Now the last part of this technical description is description of working. And description of working you need to explain briefly how the technical object is used, or how the technical object basically works. Alright, so that's how you can write a description of a technical object with appropriate content and appropriate structure. I hope you will use these guidelines when you will be writing different technical descriptions. Now, moving on to the description of a technical process. Here again we will focus on the content and structuring of technical information related to any technical or scientific process that you want to write about. So starting with first, give an orientation to the process. It's like again introducing the process that you are describing in this in the description. Okay, so first we should provide a technical definition of the process, and then when and why that process is carried out. So it's like introducing what is the process and why and when that process is required. Then moving on to the next section of technical description, that is general operation information. To carry out process, there are certain conditions or preconditions required to be fulfilled. So those pre-required conditions is what we provide information about in general operation information, like what are your requirements, like material requirements, pre-operation conditions, or the skills that a person who is carrying out that particular process needs to have, and the time that is required to complete that particular process. So these are the general information, general operation information that one needs to provide in a technical process description. We also provide stages in operation following a flow chart or the graphics. So it is graphically you have to list out the stages in the operation. So if it's a bigger operation, you know that there are different stages. Like if you talk about a process of welding, so I'm sure there might be different stages in it. So you first divide that process or procedure into stages and mention these stages in this general operation information using a flowchart or maybe another suitable graphic. The third section of a technical process is a description of each stage or phase of process in sequence. So now you have listed all the stages here. You're going to describe each stage or the phase of the process in sequence. So while you describe each stage or a phase of a process, make sure you should write that when and why to perform that particular stage or phase, and duration to carry that duration needed or required to carry that particular phase or the stage in the process. And lastly, you should also mention that if there is any need of any human intervention while the process is carried out. Now that's how you can talk about technical process, especially what should be written and how it should be structured. Now let's have a look at some of the guidelines for writing technical descriptions. First thing, whenever you are writing a technical description, maybe for a process description or an object description, make sure you determine the purpose, whether you are writing it to inform or to convince someone, and determine who the audience is. That is, what exactly they already know and what they need to know or they might expect to know from the technical description you are writing. This will help you to deciding upon the content that you need to include in your technical descriptions. Next, include concrete, measurable, factual, technical information. Make sure the information that you are providing in the technical description is concrete, is measurable and factual. Third thing, use formal language, appropriate tense and style. So technical description being technical writing need a formal language, appropriate tense and style of writing. Write the description objectively, means you cannot include your personal opinions. You need to represent that object or process the way it appears without addition of any personal opinion and liking and your interests. Third, use analogy to conceptualize the description. So if you're describing something unfamiliar, you make a comparison with something familiar, that's what we call as an analogy, can help your reader conceptualize the description. And lastly, use a combination of graphics or visuals and text to description that will help your audience to understand your description in a better way. And lastly, structure and organize the description logically. So see that the content is properly structured and organized, logically structured and organized. I would suggest to use some organizational patterns for the content, and they are here. First is sequential, like if you're describing a process, describing the stages in sequence, that will be the sequential pattern for organizing a content. And second is general to specific. If you're talking something specific information, start with general information, what it is, when it is needed, and then you go on a very specific information. Then less important to the most important. While describing any component, you should share, or any object, you should share most important information first, then the less important first and most, or vice versa it can be. All right, then you can start with problem to solution. So if you're discussing a problem, if you're discussing a solution for certain problem, first discuss the problem and then move on to the solution. Simple to complex. For example, if you're learning mathematics, you start with addition, you don't start with division, right? So that is a pattern. You start with simple, and you move on to the very complex things. Then known to unknown. So these are the different patterns that organizational patterns that you can use for technical descriptions. I hope with these guidelines you'll be using for writing technical descriptions, either object or process description. Thank you so much.